Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and this weekend is the launch of the Gundam card game around the world with the Star Deck launch events that are happening, which I know a lot of people are really excited to get into these. These are kind of their first chances to try out this card game, and I think the Star Decks are really good and just a great introduction to how this game works in the first place as well. So as part of that, I want to make this video just going over some just decisions for what Star Deck kind of works the best for you. We're going to go over all of them kind of quickly, as well as kind of some tips and tricks for anyone who are either one, returning to this game after playing a little bit during the beta, or if it's your first time actually playing this game as well. And a couple of quick things before we get into this video. First, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We're going to be making a lot of Gundam content in the future, and I don't want you guys to miss it. Also, last night I had a large live stream with Michael where we played over 3 hours of Starter Deck games just playing around. We had every combination, and honestly, I think it's a really good resource just to see what the game looks like, how it's played, and just kind of having some like tips and tricks of what we were doing while we were playing it as well. And then lastly, if you guys want to see the full card pool of what these Star Decks look like, you can go to my deck builder on Eggman Events, which is linked in the description, and you can check out the Gundam section. Go to structure decks here, and it has all 4 Star Decks, so you can check out not only what cards are in these Star Decks, but the ratios as which you get them. Also, if you guys need to get some proxies, you can press the gear here and press the proxies button, and it will generate a PDF of the cards that are in your deck list currently. So you can make sure to check that out. It's a resource we've been spending a lot of time with, and we're pretty much caught up for GDO 1 as of this recording, and we're continuing to update this on the daily too. So make sure to check that out if you haven't already, and let's get into the video. All right, and to start us off, probably the most pressing question I know a lot of you guys have on your minds: what is the best starter deck in this format? Now, you guys can see behind me what I think is the best one, but I do just want to premise it with, I think all 4 star decks are very strong. I think that there isn't really like a definitive answer outright. I think these are all great star decks, and it really honestly doesn't matter if you really ask me. I think all of them have their own value. You should choose the one that you kind of sync with most kind of play style wise. We're going to go over that in a little bit, but you shouldn't feel bad if you got Star Deck 4 because one, the deck I think can still win your event, but also I think all 4 of these decks are really good for transforming into like stronger decks when we get set 1 out in the next couple weeks too. So we're gonna go over my thoughts. If you have a decision and there, the deck resonates with you, go for it. But I don't think you should feel bad if you randomize into one of the other decks that you weren't wanting. But if you were to ask me, my tier list, it'd probably be Star Deck 3 is the best one. It's a very good aggressive deck, and sometimes it just wins because you're just going to keep pinging damage throughout the game. Also, if I'm being like maybe a little bit too honest, in a format where there's a lot of people testing this game for the first time and people are still kind of finding what the flow of the game works, nothing punishes suboptimal play like an aggressive deck, right? We've seen this in most card games too. So it's really great. I think this deck has a lot of strength. You can run out of steam in the mid to late game just because you are just kind of an early rush deck. But also, if you play 2 1-drops on turn 2, some players might not have a great way to answer that too. So I think it's the best one. I don't think it's like clearly the best one. I think that there's also just a lot of spots where these could be moved around a lot, but honestly, any configuration I think is valid too. These are just my opinions. So we also have Star Deck 1. I think it's probably the safest choice for all this. It is just the deck that has kind of answers to a lot of situations. I think Aandroidd is really good. I also think that white base is really good, which we'll talk about. But generally speaking, I think it's a safe choice. I also think it's a deck that most people want because it's the kind of the main character deck, even though like there's a bunch of series and stuff. It's the most popular iteration for Gundam that I know of personally. So I know a lot of people are going to be going to Star Deck 1. So that might be a reason why you don't get it, because again, it's the popular one from there. We also have Star Deck 4, which is definitely the one that's closer to my own play style. I really like what this deck does, having kind of more of a control aspect, also just having a lot of like bodies with high HP and making it really difficult for your opponent to kind of interact with you. I think this deck is really fun. Sometimes you need to stabilize, sometimes you I do feel like this deck in particular, there's a lot of great cards and there's a lot of just suboptimal cards, which we'll talk about, but it's really fun. And it's kind of, if I was to choose one to play for my event, I'd probably be Star Deck 4. And then to wrap it up, we've got Star Deck 2. I do think that even though what I said, I think Star Deck 2 is like maybe like a half step below the rest of these. I think that Wing Gundam is really strong, but when you only have 2 of them and it's not searchable, like this deck doesn't really have a lot of synergy within itself outside of like Wing Gundam's like a really good boss monster if you find it, and the hero as well. So I think it's likely the worst. I would say that if you can avoid it, go for it. But if you also like Wing Gundam, don't let me stop you. I think that it's still possible to win with it too. It is just probably the one that I found like the clunkiest from playtesting as well. So there it is. All right, going quickly through the star decks with a little bit more though. So star deck 1 though, blue and white. It's a white based team and academy based deck. It has high HP, it has healing and AP reduction, which is really important. So it makes it really tricky for your opponent to kind of trade and remove some of your bodies on the board just by basic combat. You also have access to blockers with Demi Trainer as well as the Zowert, which can be helpful for just like getting to the late game and not losing on the spot. You also have ways to interact with a lot of your opponent's units and blockers with your resting effects from either the gun tank or with the Amuro Ray, which is really nice. And then lastly, I think white base is one of the strongest cards in the game, if not one of the strongest bases in the game. If your opponent's not able to remove this just generates a body every turn. And in the late game, when you just have so much access to, you know, additional resources, white base is one of the best ways to generate those extra resources. So I think this is, again, like a really safe choice if you want to it. It's probably one of the easier decks just to pick up because it's just kind of like a value based deck. And you do also just have like a lot of additional synergies with just how the deck works. And most cards kind of have a couple additional like properties or ways to use them in more than one situation, which is really nice. So this is kind of the breakdown for Star Deck 1. Star Deck 2, so this is a blue and green deck. It's Operation Meteor and Oz. So it's pretty much just like a Wing Gundam deck in general. It has access to resource ramping, which we don't really see in any other kind of color in the game right now. It's kind of exclusive to green. But we've got the Wing Gundam Bird mode, which is able to generate another EX resource, which is nice. We also have access to breach and blockers. So being able to like attack into things and get the breach damage is strong, and also having some blockers in the late game. Wing Gundam and Tallgeese are probably two of my favorite LRs that just exist in this game already. Wing Gundam, we've known it has existed for a while, but the fact that with Hero you can make it a 7/7 breach card that can also attack active units that are level 4 or lower, it's just great. Like, it's really difficult for your opponent to answer this card effectively. They mostly have to go like 2 for 1, and you usually get like some really good removal with it yourself, so that's really good. And then Tallgeese was, you know, revealed a little bit later, but the fact that it's just such a good resource sink in the late game, like you can play this for 4. If your opponent doesn't remove it, then the next turn you can attack twice with it. And then obviously Zax gets some really good synergy with it too, being able to use it to draw a card, get some good trade with you, and that card draw is really, really important. But I do think like some of the commands are like a little bit inflexible, or they really only kind of have one use. So we have like Siege Ploy, which being able to rest something is good, but Amuro has kind of clouded my judgment on how good that is, so it's a little bit tough to get value from it. It does have a burst trigger, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I think it's just kind of okay, and I find myself just with it stuck in my hand a lot of the time too. We have the Troa and also the Quatre. Both of them are like good +1/+1s, but the fact that their abilities are just kind of all right? Like I think like Troa I'm probably using like a little bit too conservatively, and I should probably use the Breach 3 effect a little bit more. And like sometimes like not taking the damage off the Quatre is good too, but I feel like it's just kind of delaying what's going to happen. So I think these can be better if you're more constructed into using these as pilots as well. But again, like all 3 of these commands, like they're really only kind of good on like aggressive or in situations where you're kind of ahead. If you have like an empty board, these cards don't really do that much, which is kind of tough for it. But I do think the Gundam heavy arms that we get from this set is pretty good, and obviously the Troa being able to link with it is nice. Though even if you link with it, it's still just a 4 AP, which is kind of upsetting when you're trying to get rid of a 5 HP base, which most bases in this game are 5 HP right now. So I do think that, again, like this deck is really dependent on finding Wing Gundam, and you only have 2 of them, and your only search targets are either you have the your Institute base, which kind of only like draws you 1 if you really want to think of it that way, and the other way is like Zax with Tallgeese, but that's just like really, really late game. I guess you can also Zax with the Leo unit, but it's still like really expensive and generally not worth it. So I do think it's a really cool deck, and I really look forward to doing some more deck building with it in GDO1 format, but I haven't been convinced that this has like a lot of like consistency in this little format, so that's why I've been saying it's the worst. But don't let me stop you from playing Wing Gundam at your event. Next up, we've got Star Deck 3, and so this is the red and green aggro deck with Xeon and Neo Xeon units. I also think that it's the deck that has the potential for the most amount of consistency because we do have access to a moderately consistent searcher as well, but kind of the archetype is built around playing extra units and tokens. They're generally kind of like underpowered units, but you have ways to boost them later, which is really nice, especially when you know that's kind of like the target numbers you need to hit are like 3 to get rid of an EX base, and then usually 5 afterwards, which is is really great. There also is the access to high maneuver, which lets you attack without your opponent getting to block either. So, there are some situations where against some decks, they just kind of set up a couple blockers and hope they're enough. And so being able to ignore them altogether is just really in your favor as well. So I do think the Synergy as well as the Char's Jaku 2 are just some of the stronger cards in this deck already. Like, I think that if this archetype is going to exist, you need both these cards anyways. Char's Zaku 2 being able to like search the top of your deck for his units is kind of unheard of in this game already, so that's very strong. And then the Synergy being able to like hit over a base, not be blocked as long as you're paired, and then get rid of something with 2 or less HP, like that's just like really good value in its own way. And then we also have like the full frontal, which doesn't even need to be linked, it just needs to be paired. You get a +2/+2, and then you get to play a Xeon unit or Neo Xeon unit from your hand, which is just absurd as well. So all in all, I think there's just like some really good synergies. You also have some ways to interact during the action step with the Indignation, as well as the close combat. Close combat, I think, is just like an automatic like 2 to 4 of for any red deck already. And some pretty strong bases like the Ryula and the Fall Mail. So by and large, there's just so much that this deck gets to do. You get to be really aggressive, and if your opponent kind of has a slow start, you just end up winning a lot of the time, especially like if they don't, like there are just so many situations where like if they don't have a base in their shields, you just win because like you just get to do a lot of damage very quickly. So I think this is going to be one of the strongest decks. It's going to be very strong, and check it out if you haven't already. And then lastly, we've got Star Deck 4, again my favorite right now, though I do think there are some issues with it. So we've got the red and white build with the Earth Alliance and the Zaft archetype. It's kind of built around having like unit interactions as well as just actions as well, and bursts. So it just has like some ways to really disrupt your opponent, I think is the best way to say it, and also have like some of these control aspects. So you have access to breach, you have access to blockers, you can attack like active units. These decks can really do a lot of variety in what you can do with it as well. I also think that Striker Pack is one of the best cards in the game right now. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but the fact that it has like probably like the strongest consistent burst effect in the game right now. There are just some games where I just win because it's in my shields and bursts at the right time, and it lets me carry throughout the rest of the game, which is kind of silly in its own way. I also do think that there are some like okay cards, like the Miguel cards. I'm not a big fan of. I will like immediately take those out as soon as we get to a more constructed format. I think that they can be kind of tough, and like the Magic Bullet of Dusk is just such a specific card that it ends up just usually being dead in my hand. So like, even if it's just like a weird +1 HP, sometimes like if you have nothing better to do, it's just better to put it as a pilot on something, just so you can at least use the card before it just is stuck in your hand with a bunch of other pilots you haven't used yet. But I think the color combination for this is cool. I think that the Strike Gundam stuff is great, and already foreseeing what's in like GDO1, I think this can translate into some pretty strong decks as well. So this is the Star Deck 4 again. It's one of my favorites. It might be a little bit weak and inconsistent at times, or again just have to like hope you can upgrade the cards later. But I've been really enjoying what the kind of play style for this kind of color combination looks like. So those are what the kind of the Star Decks look like, and kind of what their play style looks like as well. So hopefully that helps you guys decide which deck you kind of want and which kind of fits your play style. Again, I think all of them are very good, and kind of also focuses on what you kind of want to upgrade once we get into GDO1 at the end of the month as well. So for the rest of this video, I kind of want to just go over some tips and tricks for people who again are either trying this game out for the first time, or are is from the beta format, haven't played in a couple months, and can kind of needs to pick up on a couple things, including the action step, which I think from my experience in the beta, it wasn't really explored as much as like a thing that happens. There weren't a lot of action cards that existed in the beta that I felt were really important, and I think that changes with the Star Decks as well. So for this slide, we're just looking at all of the kind of important action step cards that exist for each Star Deck. So we're just going to go in reverse order, just because Star Deck 1 only has one, and I need that area behind me. But for Star Deck 4, we've got Hawk of Endymion, which we did have this card exist in the beta, but I do think that there are just a lot more decks that 3 or less HP unit is really important. So especially like if you use something to like boost the AP of something, you can Hawk of Endymion to put it back into your opponent's hand, and that really just buys you a turn, and I think that can be great. The fact that it also can get rid of blockers, or be a way to get to the end. Also the fact that like the Mobius 0 can just link with it too. This card has just been really, really strong from what I've been seeing for it. So it is a command pilot, but it does help you with that as well. We also have the Magic Bullet of Dusk, which is like my least favorite card in this entire starter deck format. It has a main in action to choose one friendly unit that is level 2 or lower. It gains first strike during this turn, which means that while this unit is attacking, so even you could use this on your defensive action step, but it won't really do anything. It deals damage before the enemy unit. So the fact that it has to be like a friendly level 2 or lower, like it's just so specific, and like the amount of like advantage you get is so minuscule that I find a lot of like issues like finding ways to actually use this. And if you link it or pair it as a pilot, you're only getting like 1 more HP, which is just again very, very minuscule. So if you find any time during the game where this is like at least like a little bit useful, I recommend using it. It's something that just I feel like is dead in my hand a lot of the time, unless I find a way to link it with the unit too. But you know, I again like Hoppy and Demian, really, really good. Magic Bullet Dusk, I don't think is many people are playing this. It will not be playing this in the constructed format. We also have Star Deck 3, which has the most. We've got 3 big action cards. We've got Close Combat, which I think this card is just going to be really relevant as a red card in general. Just being able to deal 2 damage to something for 2 resources is not too bad. There's like a lot of 2 HP units that exist, at least in the Star Deck format, that you can just get that trade with. There are just some times where you're just like, I just need to get rid of something, and that lets you do so. There's a lot of blockers that just have like 2 HP or less that you can, you know, get rid of it with this. And the burst effect is great. Something that I will talk about in a little bit too is that burst effects are actually really useful, especially if they're like generically useful in a lot of board states. And close combat, if something attacked into you, it just means that close combat's able to target at least something, so it's always going to be useful as a burst as well. So I think that's really strong. We also have Indignation, so this is also command pilot. Main or action, you get to choose one friendly unit. It gets plus 2 AP during this turn. Sometimes I find myself like, you know what, I've got nothing better to do. I can just, you know, if I played a 1-drop unit, I can boost it up as a 3 cost and get rid of the EX base, so that can be kind of useful. This also can kind of get some trades in your favor. I think Unforeseen Incident, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, is a little bit better between the two, even though like this one is like a command and the other is a command pilot. But it's something that like if you have one open, you can get some like forced trades that your opponent maybe wasn't expecting, so that's pretty good. And then Blue Giant, the +1/+1's good. The actions, choose one friendly unit. It can't receive battle damage from enemy units with 2 or less AP during this battle. It's neat. It really is just like getting out of like, you know, since it's AP 2 or less, it's very minor on how it saves. It's kind of like, it's still a better version of the Magic Bullet of Dusk, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit tricky to get like value from this. Sometimes it's just better as like a +1/+1, but I do think that it's fine. You do have to be careful of it a little bit, because sometimes if you get a unit to survive one more than your opponent's expecting, that can win you the game too. So there it is. Star Deck 2 I think has like some of the weaker actions, but it does have like some usefulness, right? Peaceful is able to like get out of a shield damage for 1 resource, which is fine, but getting that card out of hand feels a little bit bad. And then Siege Ploy, like being able to rest something, obviously I think that's been a really good effect. Again, like I think Aandroid's been a little bit stronger. The burst effect though can save you from a damage though too, so that can be useful too. It's fine. I'm probably like a little bit over complaining about the card, but I think it's still fine and you can definitely use it. And we also have Unforeseen Incident, which this card is like lost me games, I feel like, in the fact that the burst effect lets you like get out of an attack at times if hit at the right time. Also the fact that the main in action can make it so your opponent can like expect to trade with a unit and then actually only they lose. Like it's really easy to get value off this card. It's really flexible, and yeah, it's really good for what it does. So I really like it a lot. If your opponent is playing Star Deck 1 and they've got 1 resource open, you better be expecting you know, that this card can wreck you, so you do have to kind of play around it if you can. So I think it's really strong, and these are kind of like the main actions. Again, a lot of people I think are kind of not used to the action step, and in case you need to know this, there is an action step at the end of the turn, which is really only good for like close combat or siege ploy. I find being able to use these abilities, or sometimes Hawk of Endymion, but using these abilities at these times mean that you do get to use your resources before they refresh on the next turn, so that can be helpful too. So do note that you can use them at the end of the turn too. So there it is. All right, next up we also do have the base burst. So this is just like a minor thing I just want to kind of go over, but there are a lot of times where if you want to like attack up in the right numbers to be able to make sure that you aren't just kind of wrecked by a base burst. So these are really strong. Generally they don't do anything on burst except for Rayula. This does let you just get rid of or deal 1 damage to a unit that has 5 or less AP. So there are some times where you can do some like favorable trades with it as well, but everything else is just setting up a base. So there might be some times where like, I can press this extra damage, but at the same time I could be giving my opponent like a base that does something, such as like the Archangel or the white base that my opponent's able to get advantage for next turn. So it's just something to kind of consider. Like if you're already like kind of ahead and knowing that you're likely going to win on the next turn too, don't give your opponent more cards that they can use to their advantage as well. And that includes like being able to give them pilots off their burst abilities to make them, get a link unit that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So something just to consider. It's generally just best to try to hit their shields as much as possible, but there are some scenarios where like I hold back a little bit, knowing that giving them the potential of more resources can lose me the game if I'm not careful. So just something to consider. So there are also command bursts. Pretty much every deck just gets one. We've looked at most of these already, but if you're playing against these decks, you do have to just be very cautious about these popping up. Unforeseen incident can help you get out of an attack or like make a trade not as useful. So make sure that if you're attacking like shields against Star Deck 1, you do all of your other attacks first and then hit into shields. Same kind of thing with Siege Ploy as well. You don't want to attack until you're at the end of your like attack steps into shields. So do note that too. Close combat as well. And then Star Deck 4, we've got the Striker Pack. This card is just, again, very absurd. You can only have one Striker Pack token out at a time, so you can't they do have that hard requirement of you have no Earth Alliance unit in play, you get to deploy one. So it's either a 4/2 or a 2/4 if you play it with the main effect, or a 3/3 if you get it off the burst as well. And I think this is like the best burst effect in the game. The fact that it's essentially like a base that you don't have to take the life for is just absurd in that way. So do note that you do have to be careful that if you feel like if you're giving your opponent potentially more resources, giving them a card from Striker Pack that can then attack for game next turn can lose you those games. So do be kind of cognizant of that happening as well. Anyways, we're pretty close to wrapping up this video, but I do have some miscellaneous advice for anyone who just wants to hear it. I know a lot of people are asking if it's better to go first or second. I find that second is generally better, but it's not like outrageously better like I felt like it was in the beta format. So I think the exception to that is like Star Deck 3 being an aggressive deck. They prefer to go first, and sometimes if I win the dice roll, I would prefer to take first away from them, because it does lose them a little bit of momentum not being able to like attack on that first turn, and the fact that they are generally the deck to play out those 1-drops so much that being able to be on like the higher resource total helps you a lot. So something to consider. Again, I don't think it's like strictly better every time, but there are some benefits and negatives for going first or second. I kind of mentioned this on like the shield burst, but I just want to kind of mention it one more time. Start attacking shields with your low AP cards and build up as you go. Just pretend that every part of their shields is a shield, a base burst, and if you think about it that way, then it kind of changes like how you approach these two. So just be really aware of like what is the worst thing to hit out of their shield if we attack into it, and kind of plan accordingly for it. Use your EX resource. This is kind of a weird one, but I know some people just like end up like never using it. It is really helpful, the fact that it does count as a level, so you are kind of like leveled up a little bit more than your opponent because of it, but eventually you still need to use it. I've seen so many people just get to the end of their game, they're like, I never used my EX resource and I never found a reason for it. So it is important for that. You do have to make sure to balance it at the right time. There are some times where like if I'm playing Star Deck 3 and I want to play the Shinaju on level 6, I want to keep the EX resource for that, but you just have to don't be afraid to use it. I've seen so many people who are, and they just kind of they pass the time where it would have been useful to use. Replace your bases with other bases. I know that it feels bad sometimes to like have to replace a healthy 5 HP base with another one, but generally speaking, if you can find enough value from it, you can still do it. The fact that you get to draw a card that you wouldn't have drawn otherwise is fine. And if you are like looking for a pilot or looking for a unit or something, sometimes it's that next card in your life too. So don't feel like you can't replace your bases with bases. It's a rule of thumb. Most of these are rules of thumb, but don't be afraid that if you find that you're losing without finding the card that you need, that is just another way to get that draw. So do not be afraid to use it. Also, don't be afraid to pair instead of link. I see so many people just be like, I can't play this character. I can't link Amuro on just like a little gun cannon, right? They're not supposed to work that way. It's fine. Like, you can do it. Like, make sure you get usage of your pilots, because I find there also are just some games where my opponents just like, they have 4 cards in hand and they're all pilots they can't link or pair with anymore because I've gotten rid of all their units. So don't be afraid to do that. You can also pair on tokens as well, so you can do that as well. And do not be afraid. And also, like, at the same way, don't be afraid to play like Wing Gundam without hero, right? Or like you can play your pilots without, or like your units without their corresponding pilots as well. Sometimes they feel bad, but don't be afraid to do it. Especially like if you're at like if you have like the EX resource, let's say you're at 3 resources on 1 EX resource, you can still play Gundam without Amuro. Like, you're fine to do so. You still get a lot of advantage just from setting up that RX. So do not be afraid to do that. And like, again, like, most of these are pieces of advice are just like, play your cards, like, use your cards. But it's true. I've seen so many games like people are just like a little bit too patient with it, or a little bit too hesitant for it, and then they could have gone like a little bit greedier, and like maybe it wouldn't have worked out. But at least that you got to use your cards, right? At least you did this end the game with like 3 or 4 cards in hand that you could have gotten like some usage for, and now you have no usage for. So I think that's like a real good rule of thumb, of just use your cards. I know it sounds like really straightforward, but a lot of people don't do it, so make sure to do so. So to wrap this up, I know a lot of people are asking for some like upgraded deck builds if you have like 2-star decks, or if you have like access to GDO1. So I'm going to be making that video pretty soon, so make sure to be on the lookout for it. Again, if you guys are new and you want to hit that like and subscribe, I will not stop you. But honestly, this game's been a lot of fun. It's been really fun, like, jumping into it. And the deck building for this game is like unlike kind of any other card game that I cover right now. And it's going to be cool to see what builds people kind of cook up in the next couple weeks as well. So that's going to be it for me. Good luck at your Star Deck pre-releases. I'm looking forward to hearing if you guys are doing well as well. And I'm going to have fun at my own as well. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.